You're standing in your kitchen at 6:45 in the morning. Coffee's brewing, kids are still asleep, and you're looking at your phone, scrolling through your bank app, doing the math in your head. Again. You make good money now, way more than you did at 28. Way more than your dad made at your age, adjusted for inflation or not. And yet somehow, you're doing this math every single month, wondering where it all goes. Wondering why it doesn't feel like you're getting ahead? You've got the house, you've got the car, you've got the job title, but there's this quiet voice in the back of your head that says something doesn't add up. And here's the uncomfortable part. You're not doing anything wrong, at least not in the obvious way. You're not gambling, you're not blowing money on stupid stuff. You're being responsible. You're doing what men your age are supposed to do. And that's exactly why you're stuck. Because the traps that get men between 35 and 45 don't look like traps. They look like upgrades. They look like success. They look like finally making it. And nobody warns you about them. Not because they're secret, but because they're uncomfortable to talk about. Today we're going to talk about what those traps actually are, why they're so dangerous during this specific decade, and most importantly, how to step out of them without blowing up your life or pretending you need to live like a monk. This is the conversation I wish someone had with me 10 years ago. And if you're in this window right now, between 35 and 45, making more money than ever, but feeling more stuck than ever, this might be the most important financial video you watch this year. I spend a lot of time thinking about money. Not just the math part, but the psychology part. The invisible scripts we follow. The decisions that seem smart in the moment, but quietly cost us everything over time. If this kind of content helps you see your financial life a little more clearly, consider subscribing or leaving a like. It helps the channel grow, and it helps more people find these conversations. Now let's get into it. Here's what most people think financial trouble looks like in your late 30s or early 40s. They picture a guy who's reckless. Maybe he's leasing a car he can't afford. Maybe he's got credit card debt from vacations. Maybe he's just bad with money. And sure, that guy exists. But he's not most guys. Most men in this age range aren't making obviously dumb choices. They're doing what society tells them is the right thing. They're buying a home in a good school district. They're financing a reliable car because they've got a family to drive around. They're taking on more responsibility at work, which comes with more stress, but also more income. They're paying for daycare, for youth sports, for the stuff that good dads pay for. None of that sounds like a trap. That sounds like growing up. And here's where things get dangerous. Because when your mistakes look like maturity, you don't question them. You double down. You assume the discomfort you feel is just the price of being an adult. But there's a difference between responsibility and rigidity. There's a difference between building a life and building a cage. And in this decade of life, a lot of men accidentally build cages without realizing it until they're already inside. Let me walk you through the core traps. The first one is upgrading your lifestyle before you've built real stability. And I don't mean buying a yacht. I mean doing totally normal things, but doing them too early. You get a raise. Maybe you finally cross into 6 figures. And it feels like you've arrived. So you upgrade. New car, nicer apartment, or a bigger house. You start eating out more. You say yes to things you used to say no to. This is called lifestyle creep, and you've probably heard the term before. But here's the part people don't emphasize enough. Lifestyle creep isn't just about spending more. It's about locking in higher fixed costs that follow you for years. When you buy a more expensive house, you don't just pay more once. You pay more every single month. Property taxes go up. Insurance goes up. Utilities go up, maintenance goes up, and now your break-even point, the amount you need just to keep your life running, has permanently increased. Let me give you some numbers. According to recent surveys, the average mortgage payment in the United States is now over $2,000 a month. For a lot of families, housing eats up 30 to 40% of their take-home income. Add in a car payment, which averages over $700 a month for new vehicles, and now you're looking at a huge chunk of every paycheck going out the door before you've saved a single dollar. And this is where the trap snaps shut. Because once you're locked into these payments, your income has to stay where it is. You can't take a risk. You can't take a pay cut for a better opportunity. You can't slow down even if you want to. You've bought a lifestyle that requires you to keep running on the treadmill at full speed. Forever. The second trap is closely related. It's financing comfort instead of buying flexibility. What do I mean by that? I mean that most financial decisions people make in their late 30s are about making life easier in the short term. And that's completely understandable. You're tired. You've got responsibilities. You've earned the right to not struggle. But the way you pay for that comfort matters. When you finance a $40,000 car over 6 years because the monthly payment looks manageable, you're not buying transportation. You're buying a 6-year obligation. You're selling your future flexibility for present comfort. And flexibility is the most underrated financial asset there is. When you have flexibility, you can say no to a bad job. You can wait for the right opportunity. You can handle an emergency without going into debt. When you don't have flexibility, every unexpected expense feels like a crisis. Every slow month at work feels like a threat. You're one layoff, one health issue, one bad quarter away from serious trouble. And the brutal part is that the comfort you bought doesn't even feel that comfortable anymore. You've gotten used to it. The nice car just feels like your car now. But the payments never get used to anything. They just keep coming. The third trap is saying yes to obligations that permanently raise your break-even point. This one's sneaky because it often feels generous. It often feels like the right thing to do. You co-sign a loan for a family member. You take on your partner's debt because you're a team now. You commit to private school tuition for your kids because you want them to have the best. You buy a house with your aging parents in mind, knowing they might need to move in someday. All of these decisions might be right for your situation. I'm not here to tell you what to value. But here's what I want you to understand. Every obligation you add to your life raises the amount you need just to break even. And once that number goes up, it rarely comes back down. You can cut subscriptions. You can skip lattes. You can do all the little stuff the internet tells you to do. But you can't easily undo a mortgage. You can't easily undo a tuition commitment. You can't easily undo a loan you co-signed. These are structural decisions. And men in this age range make a lot of them, often without fully calculating what they mean 10 years down the road. The fourth trap is mistaking income growth for financial progress. This is the one that gets high earners. You look at your salary now versus 10 years ago and you think, I'm doing great. I've made it. But income isn't wealth. Income is what comes in. Wealth is what stays. And if your expenses have grown at the same rate as your income, or faster, then you haven't actually made any progress at all. You're just running a bigger, more expensive version of the same machine. There's a reason why studies consistently show that people who earn $200,000 a year often report feeling just as financially stressed as people earning $75,000. It's not because money doesn't matter, it's because lifestyle tends to expand to fill available income. And once it does, you're back where you started, just with nicer stuff. Now let me explain why these traps are especially dangerous between 35 and 45. There are a few things happening during this decade that make it uniquely risky. First, your income is probably higher than it's ever been. That sounds like a good thing, and it is, but it also hides inefficiencies. When you're making a lot, you don't notice the leaks. You don't track where every dollar goes because there are enough dollars coming in to cover the waste. But that waste is real, and over 10 or 20 years, it compounds into hundreds of thousands of dollars you'll never get back. Second, time pressure during this decade is intense. You've got career demands, you've got kids who need you, you've got aging parents, you've got health stuff starting to creep in. You're busy. And when you're busy, you don't reflect. You don't step back and ask, is this actually working? You just keep moving. You just keep saying yes. Third, and this is the psychological trap. Responsibility during this phase starts to feel like the same thing as maturity. You tell yourself that taking on more obligations is just what adults do. That stability means being locked in. That questioning your choices is immature or ungrateful. But there's a difference between being responsible and being trapped. Responsible means you can meet your obligations. Trapped means you can't see a way out of them even if you wanted to. Let's talk about what these traps actually cost you long term. The first cost is delayed compounding. Every dollar you spend on lifestyle today is a dollar that's not working for you in the market. And when you're 37, time is still on your side, but only if you use it. If you wait until 45 or 50 to start seriously investing, you've lost the most powerful decade of compounding you had available. Let me give you an example. If you invest $500 a month starting at 35 and earn a roughly 7% return, which is below historical stock market averages, you'd have nearly $500,000 by 65. If you wait until 45 to start investing that same amount, you'd have less than half that. Same monthly contribution, same return. but half the time means way less than half the result. That's what delayed compounding costs you. And it's invisible. You don't feel it. You don't see a bill for it, but it's real and it's permanent. The second cost is chronic stress. When your break-even point is high, everything feels tight. Even when the money is coming in, you don't feel secure. You're always one unexpected expense away from trouble. And that stress affects everything. Your sleep, your health, your relationships, your ability to think clearly at work. Research shows that financial stress is one of the leading causes of anxiety and health problems in middle-aged adults. And the cruel part is that this stress doesn't come from not having enough. It often comes from having plenty of income, but no margin, no flexibility, no room to breathe. The third cost is this feeling that I think a lot of men in this age range know deep down but don't talk about. You feel successful but stuck. You've got the house, you've got the job, you look good on paper, but you can't make a move. You can't take a risk. You can't say no to the things you don't want because you need every dollar just to keep the machine running. And that's a hard place to be. Because you can't complain. You know people have it worse. But the gap between what your life looks like and what your life feels like gets wider every year. So how do you step out of this without blowing up your life? I want to be realistic here. I'm not going to tell you to sell your house, buy a van, and live on rice and beans. That's not practical for most people. And honestly, it's not even desirable. The goal isn't to reject success. The goal is to reclaim options. The first thing you can do is audit your obligations, not just your spending. Most financial advice focuses on cutting expenses, and that's fine, but the real leverage is in the structural stuff. Your mortgage, your car payment, your recurring commitments. Make a list of everything you're obligated to pay every single month, no matter what. Add it up. That number is your real baseline. That's what you need to survive. And then ask yourself, is this number where I want it to be? If it's too high, you need to start thinking about how to bring it down. That might mean downsizing. It might mean driving a cheaper car. It might mean having hard conversations about commitments you've made. But you can't manage what you don't measure. And most people have never actually calculated their true monthly obligation number. The second thing is to separate your identity from your lifestyle. This is the psychological part. A lot of men tie their self-worth to external markers. The car they drive, the neighborhood they live in, the vacations they take. And when that happens, lifestyle decisions become identity decisions. Cutting back feels like admitting failure. Downgrading feels like going backward. But here's the truth. Your identity isn't your stuff. Your identity is who you are when the stuff is gone. The man who can drive a modest car and not feel small is stronger than the man who needs a luxury car to feel big. The man who can live below his means and feel good about it has something that no amount of money can buy. And once you break that link, once your self-worth is no longer tied to your spending, you're free. You can make decisions based on what's actually best for your future, not based on what you think people expect you to have. The third thing is to reclaim optionality one decision at a time. You don't have to change everything overnight, but every decision you make going forward can either add options or remove them. Buying a bigger house removes options. Paying off debt adds options. Financing a new car removes options. Keeping your paid-off car adds options. Every time you're faced with a financial choice, ask yourself, does this give me more freedom or less? Over time, those choices compound. Not just financially, but psychologically. You start to feel lighter. You start to see possibilities instead of just obligations. Now I want to address something directly. I can already hear some guys pushing back, saying, okay, but I'm supposed to provide for my family. I'm supposed to give my kids a good life. And I agree. But providing for your family doesn't mean locking yourself into the highest possible lifestyle you can technically afford. It means building a foundation that gives your family security and options. You know what kids remember? They remember whether their parents were stressed or present. They remember whether there was tension in the house or peace. They remember whether their dad seemed free or trapped. You're not giving your kids a better life by having a nicer house if it means you're anxious all the time. You're not being a better dad by driving a newer car if it means you can't take time off. The best thing you can give your family is a stable, flexible foundation. And that often means saying no to upgrades so you can say yes to what really matters. I also want to talk about the positive side of this, because stepping out of these traps doesn't just reduce stress, it opens doors. When your break-even point is low, everything changes. You can negotiate harder at work because you don't need this job to survive. You can take a risk on a new opportunity because you've got runway. You can say no to bad deals, bad clients, bad situations because you're not desperate. That kind of freedom compounds too, because when you're not stressed about money, you think more clearly. You make better decisions, you show up more confidently, and that tends to create more opportunities, which creates more income, which gives you even more flexibility. It's a virtuous cycle, but you have to get it started. You have to make the first move. Let me give you a quick reality check with some numbers. If you're 40 years old and you're saving $500 a month, you can have roughly $250,000 by 60, assuming historically average returns. If you're spending that money instead on car payments, lifestyle upgrades, and obligations you didn't audit, that money is gone forever. Over 20 years, that's not just $120,000 in contributions, it's $130,000 in lost growth. $250,000 is the difference between having options in your 60s and having none. And it doesn't require massive income. It requires making different choices with the income you already have. I also want to mention one of the biggest mistakes I see men make in this age range. They hit a savings milestone, maybe $50,000 in the bank, maybe $100,000 in retirement accounts, and they treat it like permission to upgrade. They think, okay, I've made it. Now I can relax. Now I can get the nicer car. Now I can stop worrying so much. But that's exactly backward. Those milestones aren't rewards. They're foundations. You don't celebrate the foundation of a house by setting it on fire. You build on it. You use it as a base for something bigger. Every time you treat a milestone as permission to spend more, you reset your progress. You go back to zero. And you'll never get ahead doing that. The people who build real wealth understand that every milestone is just the beginning of the next phase. You don't stop building. You build faster because you finally have something to build with. Let me also touch on why this matters beyond money. Because at the end of the day, money is just a tool. It's a tool that gives you time, options, and peace of mind. When your finances are out of control, even if your income is high, you're not free. You're owned by your obligations. But when you get this right, when your lifestyle is intentionally below your income, when your break-even point is low, when you've got real flexibility, something shifts. You show up differently. You make decisions from a place of strength instead of fear. You're a better partner, a better parent, a better friend, a better leader. Not because you're rich, but because you're not desperate. Because you've proven to yourself that you can control your financial life. And that kind of confidence bleeds into everything else. Here's what I want you to take away from this video. The traps that get men between 35 and 45 aren't failures of discipline. They're failures of visibility. You can't avoid a trap you don't see. And society has done an incredible job of making these traps look like success. Bigger house, nicer car, more obligations. That's what winning looks like, right? But once you see it differently, once you understand that real wealth is flexibility, not lifestyle, the trap loses its power. You start making different choices, not because you're depriving yourself, but because you genuinely want something better. Security, options, peace, the ability to say no, the ability to say yes to what actually matters. If you're in this age range and you're feeling stuck, I want you to know that it's not too late. You haven't missed your window. You've got 20 or 30 years of earning and building ahead of you. But the longer you wait, the harder it gets. Every year you stay in the trap, your break-even point gets more entrenched. Your lifestyle feels more permanent. The cage feels more like just the way things are. Start now. Not tomorrow, not next quarter, not when things settle down at work. Now. Audit your obligations this week. Pick one thing you can change, one commitment you can reduce, one lifestyle upgrade you can undo. You don't have to flip your whole life upside down. You just have to start moving in the right direction. And once you do, you'll be amazed how fast things shift. Because this stuff compounds. Not just the money, the mindset, the confidence, the freedom. Alright, I've kept you for a while, and I appreciate you sticking around. If this video helped you see something differently, if it made you question something you hadn't questioned before, drop a comment and let me know. I'd love to hear from you. Here's my question. What's one financial obligation you wish you hadn't taken on? Not to shame you, but because I think this conversation needs to happen more. Men in this age range don't talk about this stuff. We act like we've got it handled. We pretend the stress isn't there. But it is. And the more we can be honest about where we got tripped up, the more we can help each other get out of it. So share if you're comfortable. And if you're not comfortable sharing your own story, tell me this. What's one decision you're going to make differently going forward? Drop it in the comments. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing and leaving a like on this video. It helps more people find this content. And honestly, I think this is the conversation a lot of guys need to have but don't know how to start. Thanks for watching.